separateness, which means he knows it not because he came to be in touch to relate the article. He knows it because he knows it from a higher perspective. Okay, thank you. All right, so now we'll start on 3 lines from the bottom. The line begins, Machrachs, that the idea Shalamaylo, the divine knowledge of the world, does not compel, does not automatically result in that coming to be. We discussed this, and I must
Excuse me, two people having the video on.
Say again?
There's 2 phones for the video.
You have your phone on the Zoom? You didn't touch the link.
Oh, really?
Okay. So someone should be off.
Yes, yes.
Okay, corrected? Fine, you got it. I have to rejuvenate the concept. The idea Shalamaylo should result immediately in it coming into being, that which is known. So to understand that it really is impossible, this is idea Shalamaylo, but certain points can be made to remove certain obvious obstacles to this principle. Bayas, when we know something, that something is known outside of ourselves. And therefore, in order for us to relate to that something, we have to go to its place. Even to see it, certainly to touch it, and certainly to own it, to get hold of it. But Lamaylo, the entire phenomenon of space, of that which allows things to be, is right there in the atom itself, in the original knower, so to speak. The knower knows things the way they are in his own reality. Therefore, the minute he knows it, in his reality, that should happen to be. The fact that it does not automatically happen to come to be, it has to be a decisive step on his part that it should be. The knowledge itself does not result in it being. That is because this knowledge is on a higher level than the creation, than the object that's known. So we gave the approach to understanding, but we have in our experience the concept of ownership. Ownership is a reality in our life, and yet it is not a tangible reality. It is not a world level. A tangible magnitude means to explain what ownership is. So this is a means for us to translate the words in the Maimer, that the idea is between his Havdalah. He knows it, but he knows it from a higher level than the physical entity. What is this higher level? Now it becomes demanding. Let's try to define this higher level. We had this mashal of ownership and so forth. You have to go a step deeper, a step further. What is this higher level? How do we define it, this higher level? So again, coming down to our world, the only way to get into this, we have to go through step by step and recognize that in our own experience, we have something that's called a higher level. So we have already identified the concept of ownership, which is an intangible concept. It conceptualizes something that has no tangible means of explaining, and yet we relate to it. Now, where is this? What is this based on? What is the meaning of ownership? What makes us able to relate to it? And here is a principle that we ought to contemplate. It is true that everything by us is what's called time and space. Time is composed of multiple units of time, seconds and minutes and hours. One moment of time is separate from another moment of time. Space, likewise. Every piece of space has its own accommodation. And you can have one thing here and another thing next to it. And then two separate spaces. Two distinct places. But then, as we spoke a while ago, again, this is a means to get into this. You have a home.
Sorry, this means to get into what?
In the understanding a broader concept of space. You have a home. I'm going to go further down. In the home, there are many rooms and so forth. And when you build this home, you build this home within an environment, a populated environment. Now, this environment could be interpreted as simply to be close to somebody else, to my friend. In other words, it's all on the physical level. It's a physical proximity to another house. But then there is also, in our own realization, that there's an overall environment, there's an overall makif that embraces the entire space. All the streets and all the houses within a certain area, it's called, we call this the same environment, the same neighborhood. A neighborhood has a name, like Crown Heights or Borough Park, or Brooklyn for that matter. So we say that this is a conventional thing in order to correlate to know what you're talking about, which area you're talking about. But the truth is, there is a reality to it. Just as a house is owned by a person, a neighborhood is also incorporated and has, so to speak, directors who are responsible for it, and it has its own rules. These are not conventional things. These are part of the human right to identify and define his place, his environment, his place of residence. And we know from the Torah, even before Avraham Avinu and so forth, every country had its nation that owned it, and this was a legitimate and legal, by Torah definitely, a valid ownership. Seems a little bit of a far-fetched concept, but please understand, the entire world, every last inch of it, is in Abish's creation. Nothing exists outside of that overall ownership. Nothing. Whether you recognize it or not makes a difference. It is the Abishah that provides. This is not open space. It is the Abishah that provides the wherewithal and the support for every last inch of ground, and for the ability to develop a neighborhood. There is the reality of existence, of presence, of space, and time at a level that we don't even identify with.
The last statement again, there's a level of time and space beyond what we identify.
What we relate to, what we think of. You think in terms of your house or your neighborhood. The truth is, way beyond that, city, state, country, continent, these are all real demarcations. How so? Why? On what basis? Where did it come from? This is the world that everything that we do, we build within the Abish's world. These are the demarcations in the world that the Abish provided. These demarcations identify the world as a divine creation, not as a wild, no man's place. Every river has a name, has a path. Every creek has a path. These paths are there because they're divine creations, and therefore everything in the divine has certain definitive identifying marks. It is correct to say that you live in Crown Heights, or Brooklyn, or New York, or the United States, or on an American continent. These are all very real identifying marks. So Brooklyn and New York and Crown Heights, these are things which are humanly identified, again from a human concept. But American continent was not made by human identification. And that it's a real demarcation line. More real than most of the others.
Which the point is, which is most real, more real?
The continental a break.
Is as real as the man-made one.
At least.
Right. And the man-made demarcations are also legitimate and real.
That's right. So there we have an interesting thing that surfaces. Here we have a demarcation of the continent. Nobody is aware of it as you travel through to Brooklyn, that of the continental demarcation line. It's at a higher level. Let's go back to our history a little bit. People lived in America, in this continent, for thousands of years prior to the advent of the British or the Spanish to come and start to populate this area. They had no means of referring to it. They had no identity, but it was there. It was absolutely there. When they finally decided to populate it and identify it, so they were identifying something that already pre-existed. The reason that these are real demarcation lines, this is important for us to conceptualize, is that each inch on the world is a divine creation. It does not come there by accident.
In those days, there was ownership.
There was ownership. Whether there was ownership that was identified or not, and let me explain to you what ownership. We have a deen that an esrog has to be yours. If the esrog is not yours, you can't make a bracha. So therefore, if somebody has an orchard, and it's before the American governmental setup, you go into his orchard to pick up an esrog, you can't make a bracha. Because it's in his domain. You have to first acquire it. All this is in order for us to get to understand the words in the mind. How ye deal, it should be machriach his house. The knowledge should result in his house. Where is the knowledge in his house? Knowledge is a remote thing, is a superficial aspect. So we're saying it's not correct. Knowledge is a much higher level, but nonetheless it's very real. To the extent that knowledge identifies an area as something belonging to you. How did Avraham Avinu acquire a Torah? Anybody?
Walking.
Before walking, Hashem said to him, lift your eyes and look eastward, westward, northward, and southward. What's the point of looking? And then the Pasuk said, this entire land that you see, to you I will give it. By divine identity, it is yours. That's because you saw it. Because ultimately, in reality, ownership to begin with is a divine principle. It is because the Rebbe has given the land, the world, to the human beings. This is why there's such thing as ownership. And this ownership goes all the way to the truth of the divine ownership of the world.
And we're focusing on ownership to get a
feel for the idea that has an effect. both. On one hand, it has an effect. On the other hand, it is above touching the object.
Oh. It has an effect, but it remains secret in its source.
That's right. Remote.
Okay. And that, okay.
We need to show up over there.
It's time to go. Okay. All right, gentlemen, thank you for your. Maybe we need to give the shiur this morning.
The environment is much more comfortable.
Here.
Yes.
You're welcome. All right. These are your recorded.
Rabbi PALTIEL, good talk and good news.
Oh, my God. Thank
Bitte,
you.
weiß noch mal
I'm
bei
going to
Höhle.
the doctor today.